Hello, everybody. Off we go to chapter one of marketing. So let's get my little clicker here. Okay, okay, chapter one. Oops. Okay, so chapter one, as you would anticipate, is an introductory chapter, and chapter one and chapter two are actually introductory chapters, and they have lots of basic marketing vocabulary. So it does make good sense to pay attention because we'll be using the same vocabulary throughout the course. So the first thing I was going to mention about this course, because you probably haven't detected this quite yet, is that this course is highly focused towards consumer products, towards consumer marketing, rather than towards industrial marketing. And I think the reason for that is because this is an introductory course and most students are relatively young. I suspect the authors picked consumer products to focus on because we're more familiar with consumer product companies than we are with industrial products. Even though I don't have the exact breakdown, but in the long run, most people actually work for industrial companies rather than consumer companies. Um, so industrial marketing might make a little bit more sense, but this is a good introductory course to marketing. So, and we do touch a little bit on industrial marketing. Okay, so off we go to chapter one, marketing, customer value, satisfaction, relationships, and experiences. Okay, what do we look at in chapter one? Where's my little pen? Let's go for blue. Okay, so we want to do define marketing and look at the necessary conditions for successful marketing to occur. And we look at the so-called the scope and the depth of marketing. We look at how marketing's first objective is to discover the needs of consumers, and then secondly to satisfy them. And then we look at the marketing program in kind of a nutshell. And the marketing program consists of these so-called marketing mix elements and environmental factors. These marketing mix elements in this course will probably refer to them most frequently as the 4 Ps of marketing. These 4 Ps of marketing, they're 4 words, each starting with the letter P, that represent 4 major aspects of the marketing plan. And the marketing mix, or these 4 Ps, these are all what we're going to call controllable factors. These are factors that the company itself can control. And then there's a context for the marketing to occur in, and that's the non-controllable factors, otherwise known as the environmental factors. So we get introduced to these concepts in this chapter, and then we come back to these same concepts in subsequent chapters and look at them in more detail. Okay, so what else do we look at in chapter one here? Okay, then the second sort of part of chapter one looks at the recent history of marketing in North America. And when we say recent history, we mean the history of marketing since the end of the Industrial Revolution. So it's for about it covers about the last 200 years, since since the early part of the 1800s. Okay, so this historical part looks at the early history of marketing in North America back in the 1800s, and then into the 1900s, and then it kind of focuses on 3 eras in the modern period of marketing history. One is the so-called market orientation era. The second is the market orientation era. Okay, and I thought there was another one there. Oh no, this is the customer experience management era. This is number 2. And then the third one is the social media marketing era, which is all 3 of these continue on today, but the most recent of these is the social media marketing era. Because as we know that companies are using more and more social media, Facebook, Twitter accounts, Pinterest, as part of their marketing initiatives. And then the final section of chapter 1, and again, it's really just an introduction to the concept of the role of ethics and social responsibility in marketing. We will come back to this, I think it's in chapter 4 in more detail, but we look at some introductory concepts of it in chapter 1. Okay, let's, oops. Okay, so, in this book, I think I mentioned this in the agenda video for chapter 1. This book, in my view, it's really somewhat of it has a bit of an encyclopedic approach to marketing. It looks at many, many facets of marketing, and it's a very detail-rich book. And it also has lots of examples in the book illustrating concepts. And sometimes, we'll look at these introductory vignettes in these chapters to kind of illustrate some of the marketing concepts that come later in that chapter, and sometimes we'll skip them. It's not a bad idea to look at this profiled company in chapter 1. Wildplay Element Parks. It's kind of an adventure tourism company based in Canada. And we'll come back to it at the end of this chapter, or towards the end of this chapter, to see an example of the 4 P's of marketing. We'll look at the marketing mix used by this Wildplay Elements Park company, just as an illustration of how the marketing mix kind of works. So it may not be a bad idea to go over this, read the profile of this company up front, just to help better understand the example of the marketing mix later on in the chapter. And I should also mention, in this book, as in many of your other textbooks, you've got the main, you got the page, and you have the content. And then every now and then, the publishers have a little bit of a bubble with some extra content up in one of the corners. And, I kind of chuckled to myself. I discovered a few years ago that sometimes students, they don't read these little bubbles. And I was kind of surprised with that one, of course, because often these bubbles are actually quite interesting, not only because they illustrate some of the concepts in the main text, but sometimes they go off in a little bit of interesting tangents and mention things that really aren't part of the main book, but they're still interesting concepts. So I would encourage you to read these little bubbles in this course, and actually in all your courses, all your textbooks. Anyways, we'll come back to that later, I'm sure. Okay, so, oops. Okay, so what is marketing? What is the definition of marketing? So the textbook gives us a definition of marketing, and this definition comes from the American Marketing Association. And marketing is the activity for A, creating, B, communicating, C, delivering, and 4, exchanging, D, exchanging so-called offerings that benefit 1, the organization itself, 2, its stakeholders, and 3, society at large. So in this definition, one of the key terms is the word offerings. And offerings is sort of a technical marketing term that we don't often use in ordinary conversation. In ordinary conversation, if you're me, then I use the word products. And most of your books will probably use the term goods, or services. I tell this to all the students. A couple years ago, I got tired of thinking in terms of goods and services. It takes 3 words, and I decided to simplify things and just call goods and services products. What we're going to see here shortly, or what we see in chapter 1 here, is that when we talk about products or talk about offerings, there are 4 classes of these so-called products. One are goods themselves, so goods are tangible things. Secondly, we have services, and so services are intangible things like haircuts, car washes, snow plows, holidays, that kind of stuff. And then we also have ideas, and then we also have experiences. This book really focuses more on goods and services, but certainly ideas are also considered to be a product or an offering that gets marketed, and likewise experiences. Experiences is kind of a sophisticated angle of marketing. The book refers to it occasionally, sometimes in chapter 1, but it doesn't really deal with it a lot, but that's okay. It's an introductory course, and we don't really have to get too involved in what experiences mean. Okay, so when we're talking about marketing, we have this definition. Marketing is the activity for creating, communicating, delivering, and exchanging products that benefit the organization itself, the stakeholders to the organization, and society at large. So this is a positive definition of what marketing is. And then you'll also see in the book on page 5, there are also, I think it's page 5, yeah, it is page 5, there are also 5 negative definitions of marketing. And the negative definitions say, negative definitions, it says marketing is not simply advertising, it is not simply selling, it's not simply common sense, it is not hucksterism, which the book kind of defines as selling unwanted things, and it's not simply manipulating, fooling, or tricking the customer. So the textbook actually gives us 2 different definitions of marketing, a positive definition and a negative definition. Okay, and then what I was also going to point out to you, I think it's in chapter 1, we mentioned that this definition of marketing comes from the American Marketing Association. And I think the chapter has the website of this association. And I like to show students, I'd like to go to that website. Let's just see if I can do it here. Okay, oops, I think you disappeared. Oops, I don't know where you are. Oh, there you are. Jeez. Sorry, everything kind of disappeared there. Oh, there you are. Okay, let's see if I can show you this, because I just want to show you this dictionary. Dictionaries don't sound very exciting, but marketing has marketing, as you'll discover as we go through this course, marketing is a very sophisticated field, and there's lots of concepts that are kind of unique to marketing. So if you're doing your assignment or you're reading the book and you kind of wonder what a particular concept means, you can go to this dictionary. Oh, there's a whole, I'm going to look up marketing. I'm going to look up market share. Market share right there. Market share right there. So market share is the percentage of a market defined in terms of units or revenue accounted for by a particular entity. So in a particular industry, there's a certain level of sales made by all the firms in the industry, and we want to know what percentage of the sales are made by a particular company, and that's the market share of that particular company. Anyways, so here's a marketing dictionary that you might want to keep in the back of your mind in case you're ever curious about looking up a term. Okay, so that's the definition of marketing, or positive and negative definition, and off we go. Next page. Okay, so now we have the necessary conditions for successful marketing to occur. So we have four necessary conditions for successful marketing to occur. So firstly, we have to have 2 or more parties, each having unsatisfied needs. We need to have a buyer and a seller. We need to have a vendor and a customer. Second thing, we need to have in order to have successful marketing is each party has to have a desire and an ability to satisfy its needs. So the vendor needs to have a product that it wants to sell, and the customer needs to have a desire for the product, and it needs to have an ability to satisfy the needs. And the ability means the buyer, the customer, has to have money, and it has to have time to connect with the vendor in order to buy the product. So we have both parties. We have both parties, buyer and seller, with needs. And then, okay, and then the two parties, the buyer and seller, they have to have a way to communicate. The vendor needs to be able to communicate the products it has for sale, and the buyer needs to express its interest and willingness to buy the product from the vendor. And then finally, we need to have an exchange. So the vendor sends the product over to the customer, and the customer sends money in return to the vendor. So each party has to have something in the exchange transaction. Okay, so let's continue on. Oops. Oh, not yet. There we go. Okay, so we want to look at the so-called scope and the depth of marketing. Okay, sorry. Okay, so first point is, what is a market? What's the definition of a market? And the definition of a market is people with the ability and desire to buy a specific product. When vendors sell their products, when they're looking for buyers for the product, they want to find that group of buyers that want the product and have the time and the money with which to find the product and to buy it. So the second point here is who engages in marketing. And here, the book, I think, is absolutely correct here. When it asks the question, who engages in marketing, the answer is everybody. So every organization, whether you're a for-profit organization, whether you're a non-profit organization, whether you're a government organization, whether you're a person, whether you're a student, you are engaged in marketing at some point in your life. If you're a student and you have an assignment to do, you put your best effort into the assignment, and then you forward your assignment to your instructor, and effectively you're trying to sell your ideas to the instructor, and you want the instructor to buy your ideas. And really, that exercise of submitting assignments, it's partially a marketing exercise. And so the book is correct here, I think, in saying that everybody engages in marketing because everybody's selling ideas at some point in time. Anyways, we'll come back to that. Okay, so the next question is, so what gets marketed? So Alex's simple answer, the simple answer is products. Normally by products we mean goods or services. Sometimes we mean ideas. Sometimes we mean experiences. But basically, it all boils down to products, or the other term the book uses is offerings. But offerings is kind of a technical term. I like the word products because we use the same concept in economics. Okay, and then so what gets marketed? Everything, or what gets marketed? Products or offerings, goods, services, ideas, experiences. And just as a bit of an aside here, the book talks a little bit about social marketing, and I'm going to say social marketing, aka also known as public service ads, advertising. Social marketing is not social media marketing. Social media marketing is something different. Social marketing is, they're public service ads. It's agencies in the community that are trying to persuade the public to engage in certain kinds of behavior, healthy behavior, for example. And that's different. Social marketing is different than social media marketing. Social media marketing is marketing that's conducted through Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn, and all those other Instagram, Pinterest, all those various forms of social media. So we don't want to confuse these two. And so we've all been exposed to social media, or sorry, social marketing or public service ads. And I've got a couple examples here. So we've all seen anti-smoking ads. I know this is very hard to read on the screen because it's very small, but parents of children who smoke get to heaven earlier. There's a little angel there. And so these are anti-smoking ads. I thought they're kind of cute. But these are public service ads. These are examples of social marketing. Okay, let's just go back. Oops. Okay, so another fundamental concept that we use in this course is this distinction between these two different types of buyers. We have so-called ultimate consumers and we have so-called organizational buyers. So ultimate consumers, the term I like to use is the word households. But the book uses the term ultimate consumers, and it means the same thing. It's people who use a product or service, and their use of the product is the end of the life of the product. You buy a pizza, you eat the pizza, you are the ultimate consumer, because after you eat the pizza is no more. If you're in the pizza business, maybe you buy your ingredients someplace else, and then you mix them up, and then you sell the pizza on. So you buy the ingredients, and then you sell it. But the ultimate consumer, or the household, is the end of the life of the product. And and so as I mentioned before, this course focuses almost exclusively on consumer products. So we look at the marketing towards ultimate consumers or marketing towards households. However, we do look at a little bit at the organizational market. In the organizational market, the book calls it the organizational buyers. Sometimes it calls it the industrial market. Normally when we use the word industry, we think of manufacturing, heavy industry kind of thing. But in marketing, the industrial market doesn't have to be manufacturing. It can just be any other business that buys a product, reprocesses it, and then sells it on to someone else. Or it can also be retailers. Retailers buy the product from a distributor and then sell the product without any further processing onto the ultimate consumer, onto the households. And so retailers are also part of the so-called industrial market or the organizational buyer market. And it also includes government buyers. Okay. So we'll come back to these later in the course. I think this is chapter, I don't know, 8 or 10 or something. No, it's not 10. It must be 7 or 8. Okay. And then, so who benefits from marketing? And the answer is the customer benefits. When we buy a product and we consume it, presumably we're deriving some kind of benefit from it. The vendor benefits because they make a profit off it. And then often, society as a whole also benefits. For example, you've got a food vendor that's selling healthy foods. Yes, the individual consumer benefits from consuming healthy foods, but so does society as a whole, because you're consuming a healthy food rather than a not so healthy food. The level of health in society increases, and society as a whole is a beneficiary. In addition to both the consumer and the vendor. Okay. Geez, I'm gonna get frustrated with this. Okay, so here's some examples of some nonprofit organizations that engage in marketing. So, Province of Manitoba advertising. I don't know what they're advertising here. Spirited Energy. Don't know what that means. And so here's can't even read it, but it's. I think this is a hospital, or maybe it's a college or university advertising their nursing program. So colleges and universities are typically nonprofit. Um, so even nonprofit organizations can engage in marketing. Okay, let's just continue on. Oh, I gotta find a better way of doing this. Okay, so now we look at this set of factors that influence marketing activities. And again, this is just an introductory chapter, and we'll come back to all this stuff in much more detail later on. But okay, so what are factors that influence the marketing activities undertaken by a business or an organization that engages in marketing? So the way the authors design this, they say there are direct influences, and that's these guys here, and then there are some indirect influences, which is these guys down here. And when we talk about the direct influences on the marketing process, we have two types. We have so-called influences that are internal to the organization. So, for example, we have a marketing department, people that come up with advertising and look after promotion. We have the manufacturing department inside the organization. We may have an R&D department. We have employees, so they're affected by HR policies. We can have IT people, senior management people, we can have finance people. So we have all these internal factors within the organization that engages in the marketing that can affect the marketing process. And we will come back to this, particularly this one here. I think it's towards the end of the course, chapter 19, I believe it is. So we have these internal factors, but we can also have some external factors. And so these are some agents that are part of society. So we have shareholders. We have these are stakeholders. These are stakeholders. So we have the owners of the company that are responsible for hiring the senior management, and the senior management directs the company. So shareholders have an influence on how marketing activities get undertaken. Certainly, customers affect the marketing process because customers express their wants and needs to marketers, and marketers try to understand those wants and needs, and then they tailor their products to serve the customers, and they tailor their promotional activities towards customers to get them to buy the products. So customers certainly have an influence on the marketing process undertaken by an organization, and then certainly suppliers to the vendor. When we buy certain products, if it's a physical product, it has certain physical characteristics. Well, ultimately, those physical characteristics are going to be due to the raw material that gets used, and the raw material comes from suppliers. So suppliers influence the product design, and so they have an influence on the marketing process. And then there can also be other organizations in society that also influence the marketing process, because maybe your company has some partners or joint ventures, and so those other parties can also influence the overall marketing process. Okay, so we have these direct influences on the marketing process, on marketing activities, but then we also have some indirect factors, and we will come back to this. I believe it's in chapter 3, and these factors, we're going to call them environmental factors. These are non-controllable factors. These I gotta just make Anyways, these are factors that are largely beyond the control of the company that's selling the product. And so there's a number of social factors, there's a number of economic factors. So social factors, there's trends in society, there's clothing trends, there's a trend in society towards more environmentally friendly vehicles, for example, so electric vehicles or natural gas vehicles. We have increasing interest in organic foods in society. We have an increasing prevalence of e-commerce. More and more products are getting sold over the internet rather than in traditional bricks and mortar stores. So those are some social factors that can influence the marketing process. We certainly have a number of economic factors. So for example, exchange value of exchange rates. What we're going to buy and sell in the international market depends on the foreign exchange rate of the Canadian dollar. We have interest rates, we have government fiscal policy. They can all have an influence on the marketing process. We have a number of technological developments. I mean, we know that more and more of our information is coming through electronic media, for example, and electronic media is due to advances in technology over the last half century, thereabouts. We have a number of business competitive factors that influence the marketing process. If we are in an industry that has intense competition between competing suppliers, then that's going to help drive the price down, and price is a feature of the marketing program that we'll see quite shortly. And then the final environmental factor or environmental force is the role of government regulation in our business. There's all sorts of government regulation affecting business, packaging, labeling, ingredients, safety regulations and whatnot, and all of these can affect the marketing program as well. Anyways, we'll come back to that in chapter 3. Okay, so let's just move on. Okay, how marketing discovers and satisfies buyer needs. So, one of the fundamental principles of marketing is the first principle of marketing is discovering consumer needs. We have to discover what our prospective customers need and want. And once we figure out what it is they need or want, then our second objective is to satisfy those needs. So the book gives us a nice little definition of needs. The book calls a need, I think I'm slightly varying the definition, but a need is a felt deprivation of a basic necessity. So we have physiological needs. Our body has physiological needs, and we have psychological needs as well. So those are kind of the underlying forces that motivate people to want to do stuff, want to buy stuff. So we have needs, and then we also have wants. And wants are needs that have been influenced by a person's knowledge, culture, and individual personality. And again, we'll come back to this in chapter 3. So what we want to say is that marketing does not create needs for a product, but it can certainly influence the wants, because the marketing can tie into the culture, what a person knows, what a person's personality requires, and so marketing can influence wants, the design of wants, whereas needs are kind of given. Okay, and I was going to point out on page 11 in the book, there's one of those little bubbles up in the top, I think it's in the top right-hand corner of the top part of the page, that talks about behavioral marketing towards children. And I would encourage you to read this little bubble, because even though this is an introductory course in marketing, and there's lots of things that we don't cover, and one thing that we don't cover a whole lot is behavioral marketing. But behavioral marketing is a relatively recent phenomena, and behavioral marketing is used extensively in e-commerce. If you go on the internet and you go searching for something to buy and you see all these ads that pop up and you think that some of those ads, sometimes we think that they're targeted towards us personally, and if you think that, you're right, because these big search engine companies, they understand what we want by our search patterns, and then they sell advertising space in real-time auction to advertisers, and that kind of advertising is based on behavioral marketing, and it's kind of a recent phenomenon, but it's quite fascinating. Anyways, Chapter 11 talks about behavioral marketing used towards children, but it's a much broader phenomena in internet marketing that we don't get into a lot in this course, but it's certainly it's a relatively recent phenomena in the world of marketing, and it's highly influential. It's quite interesting. anyways, let's move on. Okay, so the first principle of marketing is to understand consumer needs. And we would I think common sense kind of says, geez, it shouldn't be too difficult to figure out what somebody wants or needs or wants, because all we have to do is observe people or take surveys and find out and ask people, what is it that you want and need? But the book gives a fun little example here of a product that failed. So this product, what was it called? Hot Pocket Snackers, and it failed due to having defective product design. I can't remember how much money the company spent designing this product, but they discovered that when the product was frozen and then thawed, ice crystals in the product destroyed the texture, and it kind of spoiled the taste, and people didn't buy the product. And then there's some interesting stats in the book. In this section of the book, it says in North America, there's something like 40,000 new products that are introduced to the market, and 94% of them fail. That means there's a 6% success rate. So 6%, that's not very high. And what this is telling us, obviously, is that if it were so easy for marketers, if it's so easy for companies to figure out what people needed and wanted, then the success rate would be a whole lot higher than 6%. But this is a long-term statistic, and this is North America, so it's not just Canada, it's not just Alberta. So discovering what consumers need and want is not as easy as it might sound. So the book has this example of a failed recent product, but there's no end of examples of other product failures. So just for fun, I have another few to show you. You might not remember some of these because I suspect some of you are relatively young. But but here I've got one here that you'll recognize right off the bat. One of the big product failures in very recent history is the Google Glass. Google Glass was invented by Google, as you kind of guess. The Google Glass is this little computer screen that was to be displayed in front of your eye, and so you could take pictures by talking to it, and you could surf the net by, I don't know, winking or blinking or something. And the Google Glass it basically failed. There's a lot of hype behind this product. People thought that it was going to be the wave of the future for computing, but it turns out that there's issues. There's some software bugs in it, and there's issues about privacy. People thought they were getting spied on. People that were wearing these things that were banned from movie theaters because theaters thought that they were filming the movies privately, casinos, bars, da da da. So the Google Glass, Google's a monster company, revenues of $30 billion, and they invested a lot of money, a lot of publicity in this product, and it failed. And then some other interesting examples, not quite recent history, but at least not in your lifetime, but certainly in mine. A number of years ago, McDonald's came out with a new hamburger called the Arch Deluxe, and they spent $100 million. They had spent $100 million advertising this new hamburger, and guess what? It flopped. So they pulled it. It was too expensive. It was too expensive, and then they dropped back to low cost. It cost $2.29. This is back 20 years ago. 20 years ago, yeah, 20 years ago. But it's too expensive and it flopped. Another big flop that you probably don't remember is a flop from Apple. So a number of years ago, before we had smartphones, a number of companies tried to make these handheld computers, and Apple's handheld computer was called the Newton, and the Newton was a flop. It was very, very expensive. I don't think it did a very good job at recognizing handwriting and whatnot. But anyways, it's supposed to be like a pad that would recognize your handwriting, so you could keep notes. But the problem was it did the same thing that a paper notebook did, but was much more expensive. So it was also a flop. Apple, big company, Apple. Okay, and another big flop. I'm just making fun of these companies, but whoops. Another big flop was, this is from Coke. Probably don't remember this one either, but a number of years ago, Coke tried to come out with a new flavor of Coke, and the new Coke was a flop. And within a short period of time, within 2 months, Coke backtracked and brought back the old Coke. They just called it Coke Classic. But Coke spent what? $4 million in taste testing this new product, and they spent $30 million in designing the recipe, the formula for the product, and again it flopped. So the point is, here you have these big major companies, consumer products companies, revenues in the billions of dollars per year, and even they sometimes have huge product flops. And that tells us that marketing is not, discovering what consumers want and need is not necessarily easy to do. That's the lesson. Okay. So I said the first fundamental principle of marketing is discovering the needs of prospective customers by discovering the needs of prospective buyers. So we have consumer product companies, marketing department, consumer product companies. They look at consumers to see what it is they want, need, and then the company brings that information back in-house, and then they try to design a product to satisfy the discovered needs and wants. Whoops. Oh, okay. So the first principle of marketing is discovering the needs of consumers, and the second fundamental principle of marketing is satisfying those needs. Principle number one, discover. Principle number two is to satisfy. So what we know is that companies, businesses, organizations, they have limited resources, and no organization has enough resources to satisfy the needs of all consumers. So companies don't try to sell their products to everybody. What they do is they try to sell their products to a target market, which is a smaller group of people that desire the product and that it's affordable for the company to pitch its marketing program to. So when we talk about a company, talking about a marketing program, as I mentioned before, we have some environmental factors that are in the background. These are uncontrollable factors in the background, and we'll come back to those in chapter 3. So these are social factors, technological factors, economic factors, competitive factors in the industry, and regulatory factors. We'll come back to those in chapter 3. But the company also has controllable factors. And the controllable factors are known as, they're known as the marketing mix, and sometimes they're known as the 4 Ps of marketing. I kind of like the 4 Ps of marketing myself just because I find it easier to remember. And the 4 Ps of marketing are 4 words, each beginning with the letter P, that represent a major aspect of the marketing program. And so the first P stands for product. So these are the features, characteristics of the product or the service or the idea or the experience. The second P is the price. We all know that price influences what we buy and what we don't buy. The third P is promotional P. So we have advertising, we have public relations, we have public promotional gimmicks and whatnot. We'll come back to this in chapter, I want to say it's chapter 12, I could be wrong there. And then the fourth P stands for place. And place simply means the location at which we can buy the product. And so the place can either be bricks and mortar stores. So a store, you go to a restaurant, you go to the restaurant, you sit down, you buy your meal. And it can also be a virtual location. So buying something from a website, buying something from Amazon, buying something from Sears, buying something from Canadian Tire, from their website. So it's an e-location rather than a bricks and mortar location. Anyway, so these 4 Ps comprise the marketing mix and Anyways, we'll come back to this. This is a common theme throughout the entire course. The controllable marketing mix factors, otherwise known as the 4 Ps. 4 Ps of marketing. If there's one thing you're going to learn in this course, if there's one thing that you're going to be able to repeat, remember 5 years from now about this course, it's going to be the 4 Ps of marketing, because by the time you're done with this course, it will have been drilled into your head to no end. It's just a basic concept of marketing. That's why. Okay, trying to move on here. Okay, so next we have a little diagram kind of showing how these 2 fundamental principles of marketing interrelate. So first principle of marketing is discovering consumer needs, and then once the business discovers what those needs are, the company comes up with some ideas for their products, and then it tries to satisfy those needs. Satisfying the needs of consumers is the second principle of marketing. So the company comes up with these products, and then it devises a marketing plan made up of the marketing mix elements: product, price, promotion, and place. And then it sells the product to consumers. Consumers buy it or they don't buy it, and then there's feedback that goes back to the vendor, and then the vendor uses that feedback to help modify product features or marketing features. Okay, so remember we said way back at the introductory section of this chapter, we have this company, what's it called? Wild Play Element Parks. It's an adventure recreation company, and it's based in BC, and they have these adventure playgrounds around, I think there's 5 in BC and 1 in the Yukon. And so I don't know what page this is on, but we have an example marketing program that illustrates the 4 Ps of marketing. So we have this adventure a recreation company, Wild Play Element Parks. Their product is comprised of a number of services. They have so-called aerial adventures, they have bungee jumping, they have zip line rides, and they have package deals where you can get combinations of these various adventure activities kind of packaged into one thing, Primal Swing, whatever that is. Okay, so then they have a price feature to their marketing program. They have, so for their aerial adventures, they charge adults $43, they charge kids $23. For their bungee jumping, they charge $100. For those zipline rides, they charge between $25 and $100. I guess it depends on how long the ride is. And then for their package deals, up to $250, based on different combinations of the different rides. And then for their promotional P, they market their product through public relations, they market it through personal selling, they market it through publicity, and then they do some social media marketing as well, Facebook, Twitter, and through their own website. And then the final P is the so-called place P. Where is this product available? Well, they have 5 locations in BC and 1 in the Yukon. So here we have an example of these 4 P's of marketing applied to this company profile in the book. Okay, so the next little section in this introductory chapter deals with looks at the history of marketing in North America over the last, let's say, 200 years. Okay, and I'm not going to skip this slide. I'm just going to look at this slide here because it gives us a chart of this history, and we can tie in all the content from that last slide that I just skipped over. So modern marketing in North America effectively began towards the end of the Industrial Revolution. The Industrial Revolution, I can't spell. I can spell, I just can't write neatly. The Industrial Revolution lasted from about 1760 to about 1840. So we had this tremendous change in Western society on how products got produced. And so once society became industrialized, the first marketing era was the so-called production era. And so during this production area, so it lasted from 1840 till about the 1920s, thereabouts, it focused on producing goods. Because back then, manufactured goods were still relatively scarce, and businesses just assumed that if they produced products, the products would effectively sell themselves. Because they were manufactured, there's a certain level of standardization in them that wasn't present in the Industrial Revolutionary period. Okay, so we have the Industrial Revolution, along comes this production era, and the production era is followed by the so-called sales era of marketing that lasts from about 1840 to about the 1920s. So it lasts from about 1920 to about the 1960s, when companies realized that they had surplus manufacturing capacity, and so businesses had to start focusing on selling products by hiring salespeople to get rid of their surplus inventory. So during the production era, companies built up productive capacity, they had surplus capacity, and so companies said, geez, we have the surplus manufacturing capacity, let's produce more products and hire people to push the products, to sell the products, because the products aren't just going to sell themselves. Okay, and then the third era in marketing is the marketing concept era. And the marketing concept era started in about the middle of the last century, and it lasted up until about the 1990s. And during this marketing concept era, companies focused on satisfying consumer needs and wants. So opposed to companies just selling products or kind of pushing products, companies started actually looking at consumers to see, geez, does our product satisfy the customer or not? We're not just in the game of selling products, we want products that actually satisfy them. Okay, then the marketing concept era was followed by the marketing orientation era, and the marketing orientation era is still in effect today. In the marketing orientation era, was based on the premise that companies should try to establish long-term relationships with their customers. And because companies realized that their best interest wasn't served just by selling products, but by selling products back to the same customer over time. They're trying to get these lifetime customers. And one of the basic features of this marketing orientation era is the use of so-called CRM. And CRM stands for Customer Relationship Marketing. And customer relationship marketing is marketing designed to establish customer loyalty with the vendor, so the customer will keep coming back to the vendor and buying products over time. And then another related concept from this during this market orientation era is the concept, the book calls it customer lifetime value. So companies looked at a customer not in terms of the immediate sale today, but how much profit they could make from that customer if they kept that customer for a lifetime. And there's many products that we consume in society that we tend to be very loyal towards. You may have a favorite brand of cereal, favorite brand of soup, favorite brand of shampoo. Canadians tend to be highly loyal to their banks. Anyways, so banks like it when you stay their customer for decades and decades, because once you're hooked as a customer, they don't have to keep spending money on marketing towards you, or at least not to the extent that they would if they had to find you from scratch. So we have this concept of customer lifetime value, and then we also have a modern concept, a modern variation of CRM called eCRM, which really just stands for eCRM, electronic CRM. So it's simply companies using the internet to manage the long-term relationships with their customers for CRM purposes. Okay, and then so we have two final modern marketing eras. We have the customer experience management era and the social media marketing era. I'm just going to skip on to the next slide. But we see that these three eras, market orientation, customer experience management, and social media marketing, these are all still in place today, because we're only 2015, 16, whatever. Okay, let's move on. Okay, so we have the final two eras, the customer experience management era. So it started at the beginning of the century, and again, it kind of builds on CRM companies. In the customer experience management era, companies increasingly collect data about their customers, and they analyze that data in order to help build customer loyalty. And the key aspect of customer experience management is generating a layer or an element of interactivity between the vendor and the buyer. Vendors want to maintain and engage customers through what the book calls multiple touch points. And touch points in the marketing means all the little facets of communication that a customer can communicate with the vendor. So for example, you might go to Canadian Tire to buy something. So you buy something in their store and they take your information off your credit card. Then you might buy something from their catalog. You might buy something from their website. You might talk to them over the phone to arrange questions about products or something. So every time you contact these big consumer product companies, they're trying to identify you So they can build a database of information about you. And once they have this big database of information about you, they analyze the data to find out what it is you really want. So they find out that they collect some demographic information about your age, your gender, your income, where you live, and then they try to figure out what it is that you want to buy, and then they'll target their marketing towards you. Anyways, that's the customer experience management era. Companies managing the customer interaction with the organization at all these different touch points. And the point that companies are trying to achieve is that the experience with the vendor is more important than the product. So yes, you go and buy you buy a weed eater at Canadian Tire, but you only buy one weed eater in your lifetime. But what Canadian Tire is concerned about is that you had a good experience when you were shopping at Canadian Tire, so you'll come back to them for other products later on. They don't want to just make that one-time sale. They want you to know them as a friendly, reliable retailer, so you'll make repeated visits back to them. They're focusing on the experience, not just the product. Okay, and then the final sort of modern era, marketing era that we're in is social media marketing. And so obviously social media has only been around for a few years, since the early part of the century. Facebook has only been around since 2004, and YouTube has only been around since 2005. And so these are forms of social media. And of course, companies are increasingly using social media to market their products to consumers. And when you're we'll come back to this later in the course, but when companies are using the internet as part of their marketing initiatives, they're collecting a lot of information about us, they're analyzing that information, and that process is called datafication. And the way our society is evolving is that data, remember in economics, we talked about the factors of production, land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurialism. In contemporary society, social commentators observe that contemporary society, we're in the middle of a revolution, of an economic revolution. It's not an industrial revolution, it's an information revolution. So it's companies collecting data, analyzing it with computers, and then using that information somehow. In the marketing field, it's using the information to help develop new product ideas, and again, to help with behavioral marketing, so that the ads that we see are tailor-made just for us. They're tailored towards our specific needs and wants. Okay, so there's one final part left in this chapter. Anyways, I'm sure you're familiar with the datification of society, or you will be before too long. Okay. So as social media marketing era, companies are increasingly using social media as part of their marketing communication. So companies having YouTube channels, putting ads on YouTube, demonstrations on YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn, and the like. Okay, so the final section of this chapter looks at the role of ethics ethics and social responsibility in marketing. Oops, I know it's so. Okay. So when we talk about ethics, all concepts of ethics and all concepts of morality presume that people have free will. Free will means that we have a choice. If we didn't have choice, and if all of our behavior was determined by causes outside of the control of an individual person, then the concept of morality is meaningless. If for just affected by things around us and we have no control over our lives or what we do, then there's no sense of morality. So that's just a little bit of background about requirements of ethics. So in marketing, both ethics and social responsibility have a role. Ethics are moral principles and values that govern our actions and our decisions, whether we're individuals or members of a group. And the role of ethics in marketing is to address issues that arise that are not covered by laws and regulations. So ethics we kind of use on a more of a practical level to cover aspects of behavior that aren't governed by government laws. And social responsibility is the recognition that organizations, businesses, are members of society and that the organizations are accountable to society for their actions. And so companies are conscious of having social responsibility. So I think I skipped over it here, but there's no end of examples of companies demonstrating social responsibility. So a good source of examples of companies demonstrating social responsibility is in the food industry. We know that there's a trend in society towards reducing levels of reducing levels sugar consumption, because we know that if we consume too much sugar, it makes us diabetic, and that's not healthy for us. And there's also trends in society towards reducing levels of salt consumption, because salt causes high blood pressure and the like. And we have increasing trends towards genetically modified organism free food. So especially in Europe, we're not so hostile towards GMO foods in North America, but they certainly are in Europe, and we won't be surprised if North America becomes more concerned with GMO modified products in the future as well. Anyways, so company, if you're a food producer, you're conscious of your role in society, contributing towards or detracting from the level of health in society due to excess of sugar or salt levels. Okay. So the societal marketing concept means that when companies discover the needs of consumers and they seek to satisfy the needs of consumers, then the companies also try to provide for society's well-being as well as that of the individual consumers. So that kind of ties into these examples of food products. Too much sugar, too much salt, it's unhealthy for us. There's a health cost associated with these the level of these elements in our foods, and so marketers can take the level of sugar and salt into consideration in their product design. Okay, then finally we kind of look at marketing from two broad perspectives. One is sort of macro marketing and one is micro marketing. So macro marketing looks at the marketing within the context of the operation of the overall economy. So it's kind of like marketing in the context of the macro economy. So I know whenever you students will have macroeconomics this term, so you'll become familiar with that. And then micro marketing is marketing at the level of the individual firm, and this is really what this course focuses on, is micro marketing. And then the final point that we'll make here is in chapter 4. Chapter 4, we come back to, we look at ethics and social responsibility in marketing in more depth. Anyways, that's it for chapter 1. So we'll talk to you later in chapter 2. Oops.